Kandi Burruss stood beneath the blinding lights of Las Vegas with a storm of emotion swirling through her chest. The kind of overwhelming, breath-stealing feeling that rises when a lifetime of work suddenly meets a moment of recognition so massive that even the brightest stage feels too small to hold it. And as the roaring energy of BravoCon 2025 vibrated through Caesars Forum, she felt her heart tremble in a way she hadn't felt in years. Because this wasn't just another event, another performance, another appearance. This was history unfolding in real time. A celebration of every chapter she had lived, every challenge she had survived, and every triumph she had earned through grit, talent, and relentless determination. And as she walked slowly through the backstage corridor with Riley by her side, she could hear the fans chanting her name, their voices merging into a wave of love so powerful that it pushed back every doubt she had ever carried. The hall smelled of makeup powder, stage lights, perfume, and fresh carpet, but beneath all those familiar scents lived something else. Anticipation, electricity, destiny calling her forward as Andy Cohen stepped onto the stage to introduce the most emotional award of the night, the first ever Lifetime Achievement Award, created to honor a woman who had not only appeared on reality television, but shaped it, evolved it, carried it, and elevated it until her name became stitched into the fabric of Bravo history forever. As she waited behind the curtain, the montage of her life began to play on screen. A young Kandi writing songs in dimly lit studios, the early years with Escape, the powerful moment she won a Grammy, her first day filming The Real Housewives of Atlanta back in season 2, the laughter, the fights, the emotional reunions where she stared down accusations, tears, and triumphs with the same steady composure. The scenes from Candy-coated nights where she dared to talk openly about topics others avoided. The episodes of Kandi and the Gang where she fought to uplift her family's business while juggling the intensity of leadership and love. And finally, the shots of her Broadway triumphs. The productions she helped bring to life, the stages she conquered, the worlds she created that stretched far beyond the reach of television. All of it flickering across the giant screens as fans screamed in recognition of every moment. The footage washed over her like a flood of memories she had never given herself time to fully feel. And suddenly, she was no longer in Las Vegas. She was everywhere she had been before, sitting in recording booths as a teenager, dreaming big dreams before the world even knew her name, standing on stages as a young woman, performing with passion and fire, sitting at reunion couches ready to defend herself with grace and honesty, moving through studios, sets, dressing rooms, and boardrooms, always pushing, always working, always building. Because Kandi Burruss was never just a star, she was a creator of worlds, a builder of opportunities, a powerhouse who carved space for herself and others with the kind of persistence people only understand years later. When Andy finally said her name, when he declared her the first woman to ever receive the Lifetime Achievement Award, the audience erupted so loudly that the ground seemed to shake, the screams rising like a tidal wave that crashed over the entire room. And Kandi stepped out from behind the curtain into the avalanche of applause, her eyes shimmering beneath the lights as she took a slow, steady breath that filled her lungs with the magnitude of the moment. Riley walked beside her, tall, poised, proud, her presence grounding Kandi in a way nothing else could. And as they reached center stage, Kandi looked out into the sea of fans. Thousands of people who had grown up with her, cried with her, laughed with her, trusted her, and stayed with her year after year, season after season. And she felt something inside her crack open, a deep emotional release she didn't expect, because she realized that this moment wasn't just for her. It was for every woman who had been underestimated, every Black woman who had carried the weight of expectations, every mother who had balanced work and life with trembling hands, every dreamer who had fought to exist in spaces not built for them. When she took the award from Andy, her hands shook, the golden surface cold against her fingertips, and when she leaned toward the microphone, she could barely speak at first, because the world felt too bright, too loud, too full. But she pushed through the emotion and let her voice flow, telling the audience she felt all kinds of tingly feelings, laughing through tears, explaining how much it meant to stand there with Riley beside her, how deeply she felt the love pouring from fans and the Bravo family, how grateful she was to be recognized after giving so much of herself to the franchise, to the network, to the craft of storytelling, to the art of visibility and vulnerability. As she spoke, flashes of her journey flickered again in her mind. The nights she stayed awake working on music, the early morning call times for housewives, the emotional weight of reunion arguments, The pressure of being a businesswoman, mother, and public figure all at once. The moments where she insisted on being honest even when it would have been easier to perform. The moments where she chose growth even when comfort called her name. The moments where she opened her heart on camera and let the world see her pain, her triumph, her humanity. When she finished her speech, the applause rose again, even louder, echoing like thunder rolling through the desert. And she walked off stage with Riley, clutching the award as if it might float away if she let go. Backstage, everyone wanted to hug her, take photos with her, congratulate her, and she returned every hug, every smile, every word of praise, even as her mind drifted through the timeline of her life like a song she hadn't heard in years. Later, during her interview with Bravo, she tried to explain the feeling, saying she felt excited, honored, filled with gratitude, but deep inside she felt something she didn't have the perfect word for yet. A sense of closure and rebirth happening at the same time, the closing of a chapter and the opening of a new one, and she knew that even though she wasn't returning to Housewives anytime soon, her story was far from finished. She remembered the shock she felt when Andy first told her about the award months earlier on Watch What Happens Live, how she joked, "Wait a minute, y'all picking me? What?" And how even then she didn't fully understand the scope of what that honor would feel like until she stood on stage, bathed in applause. That night, when she returned to her hotel suite with Riley already asleep in the next room, Kandi set the award gently on the table and sat alone by the window, staring out at the neon glow of the Las Vegas Strip, her mind quiet for the first time in years, and she allowed herself to feel the full weight of everything she had accomplished, everything she had survived, everything she had built. And the tears came, not sad tears, not overwhelmed tears, but tears of release, relief, pride, gratitude, and transformation. She thought about leaving RHOA in 2023 after 14 consecutive seasons, how hard it was to walk away from something she had poured so much of herself into, and how liberating it felt to finally step into a chapter where she could choose projects that aligned with her evolving passions. She thought about Broadway calling her name again, about joining the cast of & Juliet as Angelique, about stepping back into the world of theater where music, acting, and storytelling merged in a way that ignited her spirit. And she felt a spark of excitement rising in her chest, because she knew that this role wasn't just another opportunity, it was a rebirth, a renewal, a chance to show the world that she was more than reality television, more than headlines, more than drama, more than any single chapter of her story. She thought about how she would walk onto that stage in December, how the lights would rise, how the audience would hush, how she would take her first breath in costume and step into the role with everything she had learned from decades of performing, creating, growing, and evolving. And as the minutes passed and the city buzzed below her, she whispered to herself that she had earned every bit of this moment, every cheer, every headline, every congratulation, because she had lived a life of purpose, resilience, and authenticity. And the award was not a finale. It was a mirror reflecting the truth of who she had always been. When the sun finally began to rise, washing the sky in pale orange light, Kandi touched the award one more time and smiled, knowing that she was standing on the edge of something even bigger than what came before, knowing that her journey was still unfolding, knowing that she would continue to rise, create, lead, and inspire. Because Kandi Burruss was a woman built from courage and creativity, a woman whose story refused to fade, a woman whose flame only grew brighter with time. And as she prepared to step into the next chapter of her extraordinary life, she carried one truth with her. This was not the end of her story, not the peak of her mountain, not the final applause. It was only the beginning of something new, something powerful, something destined. And as long as she continued to dream, to work, to build, and to shine, the world would follow, watching, cheering, and celebrating the unstoppable force that is Kandi Burruss. And yet, even as she held that truth close, the reality of everything she had conquered kept swelling inside her like a rising tide that refused to settle, because she knew that every step of her journey had been carved through obstacles that tried to slow her, silence her, or shake her, and she had pushed through each one with an unbreakable spirit that refused to let her dim. And as she thought back on all the years she spent balancing her personal life with the heavy demands of fame, she remembered the long nights filming scenes that stretched into early mornings, the emotional toll of carrying her own story while navigating the stories of others, the pressure of maintaining grace while surrounded by cameras, ready to capture every flaw, every argument, every unpredictable explosion of reality. And she realized that what made her journey different was the way she had survived it with integrity. refusing to lose herself even when the world wanted her to become something smaller, louder, messier, or more dramatic than her truth would allow. She remembered the moments when people underestimated her, mistook her calmness for weakness, misread her silence as surrender, never realizing that she was watching, analyzing, choosing her responses with the wisdom of someone who understood that power didn't live in noise. It lived in control, intention, and authenticity, and the way she carried that strength through every reunion, every conflict, every twist of the storyline was what made audiences respect her beyond the entertainment. Because people saw her heart, her discipline, her loyalty, her consistency, and they trusted her because she never pretended to be anything she wasn't, never hid from accountability, never shied away from vulnerability, and never allowed the chaos around her to redefine who she was. And as she sat there reflecting on it all, she realized that this new chapter, this transition into Broadway once again, was not just a career move, but a spiritual shift, a return to the pure creative fire that lived inside her. Before the fame, before the cameras, before the world demanded so much of her, and she felt a flutter of excitement in her chest as she imagined stepping into rehearsals, feeling the wooden stage beneath her feet, hearing the orchestra warming up, embracing the challenge of embodying Angelique with her own humor, strength, and emotional depth. And she knew that she would bring something special to the production, something rooted in her lived experience, something shaped by every battle she had fought, every triumph she had earned, every heartbreak she had survived. Because Kandi Burruss had always been more than her titles. More than singer, more than songwriter, more than reality star, more than producer, more than businesswoman. She was a creator of moments, a giver of emotion, a storyteller whose voice carried the weight of authenticity. And Broadway would feel that when she stepped onto the stage night after night, giving audiences a piece of her soul wrapped in performance. And as she thought about how fans would come from all over the world to see her perform live, how they would cheer her name from the balcony, how they would watch her disappear into a character with the ease of someone born to perform, she felt her emotions swell again, because she understood that every chapter of her life, even the painful ones, had built her into the woman who could stand on that stage with unwavering confidence. And she whispered a silent prayer of gratitude for every lesson, every hardship, every opportunity, knowing that her path was not accidental, but aligned with something greater, something divine, something woven into her purpose long before she ever realized it. And as she finally stepped away from the window to rest, she knew deep down that her story, her real story, was still only beginning, because the fire inside her had never dimmed, never shrank, never weakened. And in the quiet of that Las Vegas morning, she realized that the world would continue watching her, learning from her, celebrating her, and loving her, because she embodied what it meant to rise again and again, no matter the circumstance, no matter the pressure, no matter the expectations. And that truth alone wrapped around her like a warm, steady embrace that reminded her of the woman she had always been and the woman she would continue to become. Someone unstoppable, someone extraordinary, someone destined to leave a mark that would echo long after the applause faded and the lights dimmed. Because Kandi Burruss was not finished. Not by a long shot. Kandi held the award in her hands. She felt the weight of every year she had worked, every fight, every triumph, every tear. She looked at Riley, standing proud beside her. Her daughter's smile reminded her why she had never given up. The applause of the fans still echoed in her ears. She remembered all the nights of hard work. The long hours in the studio, the late nights filming, the reunions, the arguments, the laughter, the love. Everything had led to this moment. She thought of Broadway, of stepping into a new stage, of performing as Angelique. Her heart raced with excitement. She knew the work would be hard, but she was ready. She had always been ready. She had built herself through resilience and talent. She had created opportunities where none existed. She had survived doubt and judgment. She had risen every single time, and now she could finally see it. Her legacy, her influence, her power. It was visible. It was celebrated. She whispered to herself that this was only the beginning. She would continue to create, to inspire, to shine, to perform, to grow. Her story was far from over. She had more to give, more to achieve, more to share. And as the lights of Las Vegas faded into the early morning, Kandi Burruss felt a calm strength. She felt pride. She felt gratitude. She felt love. The Lifetime Achievement Award was not the end. It was a reminder, a symbol, a promise that her journey would continue, that her story would rise higher, that she would keep shining. And she knew she would. Always,